But I think when you're able to understand how reporters think, relate to reporters, understanding the whole journalism process, it makes it much easier to be an SEO at a news publisher. I believe at e-commerce SEOs are completely different from news publishing SEOs. It's like a completely different thing. And each has a different skill. So yeah, I mean, I think, SEO isn't taught in college, right? It isn't taught in high school, right? So I definitely think like anyone that wants to be an SEO can pick it up, learn it, and really work at any type of publication that they want to, or e-commerce brand at the same time.
Yeah, I think this is interesting for the class because you're the first person in publishing that we're bringing in, which is why I
Okay.
wanted to bring you in and give that unique perspective because
Mhm.
almost everybody else will be hearing from works agency, works a
Yeah.
certain kind of in-house. So I think it's very important to show that there are so many routes in
Oh yeah, for sure.
SEO, and then not just SEO but growth opportunities that go beyond
Mhm.
that and then allow you to like just touch the ceiling and just keep like breaking it
Yeah.
down and what is possible. So I'm going to let the class introduce themselves, starting from
Sure.
Catherine, and then I'll come back to you again, Claudia. I just wanted to like meet everyone in the class here because
Yeah, yeah,
what
of
we're doing
course.
here is kind of very special. Catherine,
Yeah.
introduce yourself.
Okay, hi Claudio. I'm Catherine. I'm a content writer, B2B content writer, and I'm transitioning into tech SEO. I'm based in Nigeria and so sensitive.
Awesome. Likewise.
Okay, Deborah.
Hi, Claudio.
Yeah.
I'm Deborah. I'm a content writer, just like Catherine. And I'm
Hmm.
also a tech SEO, which I found very overwhelming and interesting. It's so
Awesome.
nice to meet you that you're very unique today. Like, I was surprised when I got to hear that you were a journalist. So that got me that so there could be SEO for journalists. So I'm
Oh
happy
yeah,
to
for
meet
sure.
you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Matilda.
Hi, Claudio. It's so nice to meet you. I'm Matilda from Nigeria, and I'm obviously new in Tech SU, transitioning to Tech SU, and it's so nice to meet you, and it's so nice to hear fresh perspective from you entirely. So nice to meet
Absolutely.
you.
Likewise, likewise.
Prachi.
Hi, Claudio. I'm really excited to hear about your journey because I worked briefly in publishing. I used to work for Red Bull Media House.
Hmm.
So I did mostly content and on-page optimization for SEO, and
Okay.
now I'm transitioning into technical SEO. I'm really
Okay.
excited to hear more about your journey as
Awesome.
well.
Munene.
Hey Claudio.
Name's
My name is Monene. I'm based in Kenya. Very excited to hear about your story today. I have been in the digital marketing scene. Just a little bit of content SEO, touched a bit on that now, looking to transition into tech SEO. And like it's very exciting to hear the stuff that you're doing with newsrooms because the most of the SEO stuff that we've had before has a lot to do with e-commerce SEO.
hmm.
So this is very interesting and
Yeah.
reminds me of something that Simon from Blue Ari mentioned, how when you're dealing with such huge sites like that, a lot of technical SEO is involved. So I
Oh
bet
yeah,
you
for
have a
sure.
lot of technical SEO knowledge to share with us. Looking forward to hear all that.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Goodness.
Hi, Claudia. So nice to meet you. I'm
Likewise,
really
likewise.
excited to hear your to hear your story. Yeah, I'm not a content writer, but I've been working in admin for quite some time, and I'm transitioning to tech SEO. So thank you for joining us today.
Sadiq.
Sorry about that. Hi, Claudio. My name is Sadiq. I'm based in Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us. I am a content marketer and I have also worked as a journalist before. I did about 2 years working in house for a journalistic company. And right now, because of my love for content creation and all of those, I run a data and tech journalist platform called Tech with Africa. We do tech news and all of those. And I think, you coming in today is very special for me, having a background or some kind of know-how in journalism and then seeing how I can put that into the tech SEO perspective. So thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course.
Alison.
Hello, Claudio, and hello, everyone. I'm Alison Kingsley. I'm born and bred in Nigeria, currently based in Nigeria. It's exciting to have you with us to come and tell us your story, tech SEO story. I have been in the tech SEO space, although I was doing it as a kind of a naive kind of person who actually knew nothing. So the program that's going on now is enlightening me and giving me fresh perspectives concerning tech SEO. I mean, I saw your pinned tweet on how you broke the barrier and into the journalist space as an SEO. Is it in the New York Times or so? I was really impressed, and it's an opportunity to hear from the horse's mouth today. So I'm really impressed to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Abiola.
Okay, that leads only me now. So my name is Abiola Onosonya, based in Lagos, Nigeria. So I want to thank you very much for being here with us. Actually, let me say, well, I did it's part of content marketing, but I wasn't fancying a lot, you know, because I think tech SEO is the place I believe I really want to cost better. And from your own perspective, you are the first person we've had that in the journalism aspect. I think it would be interesting for us to see how tech SEO can be used in that aspect. I think we look forward to hearing more from you and appreciate you for you being here with us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So Claudio, you can see that we kind of have like a diverse background of students from like different places, and
much needed.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm just going to throw the mic over to you. Just tell us your story from what were you doing before you even found your way into like SEO, like how did you even find your way there? Because we've been hearing so many different perspectives, so many interesting perspectives of how people get into SEO, and then what has your career growth been like? What has propelled that career growth, and how you got to where you are now?
I mean, I think for me, I was so when I went to college, I used to play high school basketball, and I played 1 year of college basketball, so I was a basketball player, right? So I really had no dreams of playing, of doing journalism or SEO. I didn't even know what SEO was when I was 18, right? So for me, when I got to college, I honestly didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was just kind of there. And my parents wanted me to graduate, so that was like my job to graduate, right? And when I got to like my second year of school, that's when I started. That's when I like started taking school seriously, I would say, and I began to take journalism courses. And that was the one thing that I felt like I was doing really well at that point. And then from there, I just made journalism my major. It ended up being my degree, etc. And then I graduated from school with it. I was working at newspapers, small newspapers, big newspapers. And then I graduated in 2008. And then around 2011, I was like 3 years into just working as a newspaper reporter, but I really wasn't like loving it that way anymore. Like I liked it, but I didn't like it in the sense of doing it forever. But I still wanted it to be sort of a part of my life, right? And at that point, I was working at a digital company called Interactive One, and they had an SEO manager. This was 2011. And he was telling me all these things that I should do, in terms of on-page optimization, headlines, URLs, internal linking, all these things. And I was like, get out of my face, man. I don't want to listen to you. Like, this is journalism. Like, don't mess with this, right? So I was like ignoring him, all that other stuff. And then after a while, like a lot of what he was telling me to do was like sort of working. And he started teaching it to me. So I was like really the only person that he was teaching SEO to at the company. Little did I know that after like a month of him teaching me, he left the company. So I was the only person at the company that knew SEO. And I wouldn't say I knew SEO, like I understood the basics of it, right? And at that point, the company was like, well, we're not going to hire a replacement. You kind of know it, so maybe you could add it to your job, right? They didn't give me no more money. They didn't give me another title. They didn't give me none of that, right? And at that point, I was like, all right, I was young, so I was like, I'll do it, whatever. And I just really kind of like started learning it. You know, I really started like studying other people in the space. I started learning a lot about SEO, more editorial SEO than tech SEO, to be honest, right? Just because I was working in a newspaper. So along the lines of, I would say, content strategy and things of that nature. And I worked at that company for like about 1.5 years more, really kind of learned SEO, really helped grow their traffic. Then I moved to another company and another company. And for me, I'm like the type of person that I tend to stay at places like 2 years. And if I don't really kind of see the growth or progress that I want to see personally, I kind of move on for multiple reasons, just for growth reasons, but also at the same time, at least in the US, right? I think it's probably the easiest way to make more money, right? Is to jump from company to company versus kind of staying at one company. Staying at one company here in the US, you're kind of at the mercy of them. You know, giving you a raise or wanting to promote you or all that other stuff, right? So I worked at SEO at another company, and then I worked at SEO at another company. And so about like 5 years into SEO, I was able to grow from like an analyst to a manager to a director. And then on LinkedIn, the New York Times reached out to me because I was doing a lot of local SEO at the time, right? So I was doing a lot of SEO. I was doing a lot of journalism related to local SEO, so like different markets across the US when I was at CBS. And they really wanted to grow their audience across the country. And they reached out to me. They were like, hey, we would love to, you know, kind of talk to you. I had no clue that they wanted to like hire me. So I just went and I was like, hey, like, you know, what's up? What's going on, right? So I thought it was like a natural conversation. And, you know, it went well. And then 2 weeks later, they were like, hey, we want to interview you like for real to kind of get a job here. And I went through like 8 interviews over like 8 months, like 3 months. I had an interview once at 7 o'clock in the morning. And then I got that job. And when I got to the Times, I was an SEO analyst in 2016. And I was working under somebody who now runs SEO for the cooking side of the New York Times, which is a little more evergreen, I would say. And yeah, I mean, I've been there 5 years. I've been there through Trump. I've been there through elections. I've been through pretty much every major news event you can imagine. And I think, you know, for a lot of SEOs in the publishing space, you know, while I knew a lot about SEO and I was really confident in my skills at that point, I mean, I think working in a news environment like that one really just kind of upped my game, I would say, really kind of took me, in my opinion, to another level professionally and just from a skill perspective. And, you know, I went from, you know, being managed by one person to helping the Times grow their audience by like 4 billion users. And, you know, biggest publisher in the world. Now I went from, it was a team of 2 to now I manage a team of 8, or I used to manage because I'm at The Athletic now. So yeah, I was able to really kind of convince the organization that SEO was important, that SEO was a vital part of journalism, that SEO people can be journalists too, which I think is extremely important when you think about publisher SEO. And publisher SEO, a lot of times what people think about people who do SEO is that they like just know some sort of magic and put keywords here, but they don't really know anything or don't have any editorial like sensibility or have any editorial qualities. And I, you know, I completely disagree with that kind of thinking, because I think we're journalists as well. And I would say a lot of the job of an editorial SEO at a news publisher is really your communication skills, right? I don't really look at it any different than working at a store, working at a shop, whatever it may be. Like, your job is to serve the journalists that are writing the content and make sure that they get more visibility. But the only way that you can really kind of convince them to do what you want them to do is to have a positive relationship with them, right? A lot of the SEOs that are a little more technical, no offense to anyone here, obviously, but I've seen a lot of SEOs that have worked in publishing SEO and have failed a lot because they think they know best versus trying to create a relationship, right? So it's really about creating a relationship with the vendor, with the client, with the newspaper brand, versus kind of like saying, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do because I know this is what you need to do, and this is what's going to get you more traffic, right? Because that's the wrong approach. Like, at least in the newspaper, it's a completely wrong approach, right? That could be true. 2 things can be true, right? You can be absolutely right in what you're saying, but you can be absolutely wrong in your approach, right? And your approach in a newsroom is to just make sure that you could create relationships. The more relationships you can create, the more work that you can, the more results you'll get, the more visibility you'll get, the more respect you'll get, and more things that you want done will get done. I've 100% seen SEOs, 100% like in my face, seen them completely fail because they thought like they knew best. And their way of communicating was the right way of communicating. Like, you're in a service-oriented job in news publishing SEO. It's a little different from e-commerce, where you're kind of afar, right? Like, you're at an agency and you're like, hey, do this, do this, do this, right? There's really no relationship building, right? In reality, if you're at an agency, you're not inside the company. You're not going to lunch. You're not going to breakfast. You're not drinking water. You're not drinking coffee. You don't know anyone there outside of a computer screen. Right? So like, when you're at a news publisher, you're there every single day. You're there with people who yesterday had a great attitude and today have a bad attitude. Yesterday they liked you, today they dislike you. Yesterday they wanted to talk to you, today they don't want to talk to you. So you really kind of like, the first part of really like news SEO or editorial SEO inside a publisher is really how you kind of like manage relationships. The skill is the skill, right? But managing relationships is kind of the key thing, I would say.
That's incredible. That's an incredible story. Okay, so I have some questions. I want to touch back on how did you grow your skill level? Because I think that's something very important, seeing as you did, like, nobody ever receives any formal training. So what specific, or should I say intentional, actions did you take to become a better editorial SEO?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one is, obviously studying. Obviously you can go the tech route and kind of study site architecture, kind of study markup, code, all that other stuff, right? And try to get as best as you can at that from a technical perspective. But I really think what's the most important, number one, wherever you're working, whether it's as an external, whether it's as an external provider or you're actually in the office, is really just kind of understanding that newsroom, understanding that news organization, understanding every editor. Like, the number one key for me to success, I really, really believe, has been really kind of sitting down with every main editor in every newspaper that I worked with and really kind of understand why he or she thinks this piece of content is important and this piece of content is like not important, or this piece of content is in quality and that piece of content is quality. What that has allowed me to do, number one, is really kind of understand the editorial sensibility of each person in that newsroom, understand what I can push with, what I cannot push with, right? And then from there, really kind of be able to lean into those likes, but also kind of show them opportunities, whether you're using tools like, SimilarWeb, SEMrush, I don't know, Ahrefs, Screaming Frog, whatever it may be, right? Any tools that you're using that will be able to kind of show keyword volume, keyword ranking, organic ranking, whatever it may be able to say to them like, hey, like, we're going to do everything that you want to do, right? Like, you want to be better at coverage in Brazil, or you want to be better at coverage in Nairobi, right? So we could do all that, right? But you also have like these pockets where you have a lot of coverage, where you don't have that much visibility, right? Like, you rank number 1 on Nairobi coverage, but you rank 18th on Kenyan coverage. Why is that? Is Nairobi more important to you than Kenya, right? Or are they both the same in your book, right? All right, so now, while Nairobi, let's say, may be a little more important to you from a coverage perspective, what can we really do with Kenyan coverage as you're still investing in that, right? And here are the things that not only we can do from an editorial perspective, but I also want to show you what other people have done from an editorial perspective that have gotten them more visibility on this specific topic. So a lot of it has also been not only looking at the volume and the research in terms of like what they're doing well at or what they're not doing well at, but also tying it with their mission, right? Because you could rank number 7 on something naturally, but you don't really care about ranking on it, right? You don't really want to write about it much. You just naturally rank on it. But you could rank 30th on something that you really want to rank 5th on, right? Or 4th on, or 3rd on, right? So how do we get you to that place, right? So that's really kind of the most important thing for me, really kind of understanding their mission and really tying it into data versus leading with data, right? So I think a lot of times, data becomes the for me, data is the icing on the cake. It's not the cake, right? Like my job is to make sure that whatever you want to do and is your mission, I could find ways to lean into that mission more and then say, and yeah, like, you know, there's 800,000 people searching for this every month. So I think there's more, that's more reason for us to actually do this work. Outside of that, I think obviously understanding different story forms, structures, right? Like there's, you know, for example, like we do a lot of explainers, right? That has subheads, H1s, H2s, H3s, all that stuff, right? Kind of learning the different story types, formats, things of that nature, understanding breaking news. One of the most important keys in news publishing SEO is really understanding the carousel, right? Understanding the news carousel on a daily basis, understanding how Google treats it, understand how Google treats it when there's breaking news, if there's like a fire or a war or anything, and be able to kind of report back to your newsroom in a manner that allows them to kind of understand what they need to change or what they need to do to kind of get better. And I think outside of that, you know, just really kind of, you know, just really kind of like leaning at core, it's really kind of leaning into the product, right? SEO, journalism is the product. SEO is the service. SEO is not the product. Journalism is the product, right? So I'm providing a service, right? So what I'm trying to accomplish doesn't really come first. It's what they're trying to accomplish. So for me, it's really just kind of understanding the editorial direction, leaning into that, and then using data to support it versus kind of saying, this is the data, this is what you need to do, even if it doesn't match up with what they want to do as a brand. So it's really kind of using that as the supporting cast versus kind of like the main feature, I would say.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I love how detailed that was. So I want to ask another question that I think is pertinent for the class since they're just starting out. You seem to be very good at moving, knowing when to move, finding those opportunities that obviously pay better and then give you the space to grow in your career. So these are new crop of tech SEOs going into the field. What advice would you tell them about one, finding the right job, interviewing, showing value, getting hired, and then knowing when to move and finding what the next opportunity should be? So I think I just asked like multiple questions in one. Did you get that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So what I would say, I think number one, you know, one of the things that's been important for me is that, you know, I think number one, when you're looking for a job, like I'll take you through what my process was when I was looking for a job. My process was I would go on a job website. I would look at all the links that said SEO on them. If the title seemed interesting, I didn't read anything within it, right? I didn't know anything about like what it read, what it said, whatever, right? I would open up all the tabs, right? So there were some days where I would open up 30 tabs. There were some days where I would open 2, right? And at the end of each day, I would run through all those tabs, right? And I would say to myself, all right, like, do I really want to do this? Right? Like, is this a job that I could really see myself doing? Is this a job that I feel qualified for? I think what happens with a lot of people is that, and I was guilty of this myself, is that, you know, we'll see like tech SEO or editorial SEO and we apply for everything. And I think when you apply for everything, really what you set yourself up for is more failure than actually joy. Because if you apply for 50 jobs, you're probably not going to get 25 callbacks. Probably not going to get 30 callbacks. There were a lot of times where I applied for 30 jobs in one day and I literally got 0 back. And I can tell you that like crushed my attitude, that crushed my morale. And what I really kind of started realizing was like, I need to start applying for things that I feel really passionate about or feel like are really up my alley versus just kind of applying to get a job. Now, I say that saying that everyone's situation is different, right? So that's not to say that maybe you should apply for 30 jobs, right? Depending on what situation you're kind of in. But that's one of the first things. I think number 2, what was key for me is being able to like present myself in an interview in a way that I was trying to defeat. I wasn't necessarily thinking about the interview. So like if I'm interviewing right now, right? I know that all 12 of you are my competition, right? So instead of like my interviewer is Chima, right? That's how I pronounce the name, correct?
Yeah.
I'm not really focused on Chima, right? I'm here, I'm in the door. That's it. Like I'm worthy of being here, right? My job is to beat every one of you, right? So what can I do in this job interview that can make me better than all of you, right? Because if I'm good, then you're good. So I have to worry about that, right? And I think what ends up happening a lot of times is, we go into interviews and we're like, all right, here's my resume. Yeah, I did this here, I did this here, I did this here, I did this here. But no one cares about that, right? Like you're there because you did that there, right? Like, what are you gonna do in this interview that's gonna make me think you should get a second interview? And what can I do to eliminate all the competition that I have in all these interviews? So what I tend to tell people, just to give you a perfect example, when I got to the Times, one of like my initiation phases was reviewing 500 resumes. I had to review 500 resumes for a fellowship we had. And the resumes that moved forward were the resumes that provided ideas. And what I mean by that is being able to go into an interview and say like, hey, I'm applying for techwithafrica.com, right? Here's what I can do for Tech with Africa. Here are 5 ideas, right? You can hire me and I can implement them. You can not hire me and you could take them. I don't care. Why? Because a lot of times what we end up doing in job interviews is that we stay so close to our ideas that we don't want to give them up. But my thinking is, if I go to techwithafrica.com and I give them 5 ideas, they don't hire me. And 6 months later, I see that they used all 5 of my ideas. The number one reaction that people have is they get upset. They didn't hire me. They took my ideas. But like, if you apply for another job, you're going to have more ideas. If you apply for another job, you're going to have more ideas. So the last thing that is your problem is ideas. Ideas, you have plenty. People are going to steal them. People are going to take them. People are going to implement them, right? Your framing should less be, they stole my ideas. Your framing should be like, they stole my ideas because my ideas are good, right? So instead of being like, they stole my ideas, I can't believe them, it's like, they stole my ideas because they're good. So you really want to kind of go into interviews trying to stand out. I think that's the main key overall. And then when I think you're at a company, I think really just, working as hard as you possibly can, is the most important thing. I think also finding ways to provide value in ways that they haven't before, right? So if there's something that you feel is a hole within the company, finding a way to provide value within that, whether it's through reporting, whether it's through data, whether it's through something that they may not be happening, make something of your own in that company where they're like, wow, Allison or Prashi just did this. We've never had this type of analysis, but it's so invaluable to us, right? So really kind of making a mark, making your own individual stamp at a company versus just kind of following what your manager wants you to do. Naturally, you're going to follow what your manager wants you to do, but you also want to kind of find ways to introduce things that you could potentially independently own, right? And then I think when it comes to like finding a job, I think when it comes to transitioning from a job, it really depends kind of what market you're in. Every market is different, right? I really think number one, when you start feeling like you're tapped out from like like I've done all I could, like I've accomplished everything I can here, I'm ready for a next step, right? Now, if you're ready for a next step, right, you obviously want to be honest with yourself if you are, right? Because a lot of people say they are and they're really not. Like I go through that every day because I manage people. So it's really kind of thinking like, what, how do I want to grow and how do I communicate what I want to grow in? That's kind of the most important thing, right? And if that company isn't giving you the opportunity to grow, I'm not telling you to leave that company. But what I am telling you is to kind of move in a direction where you start applying at other companies and start like sending out applications and interviewing, right? Salary and all those things obviously depend. Obviously, you want to ask for much more than what you currently make at the next job that you get. But I really do think you'll know when you're like over a place because maybe the quality of your work dips a little bit because you're not as enthused as you once were. And yeah, that's what I would say to those questions.
Yeah, that's just brilliant. So I hope okay, this is being recorded. So at some point, we're going to add everything to the platform because I really want you guys to have all of this information beyond the internship, because beyond the internship, that's when real work really starts, trying to get jobs, grow your career, make your name. Claudio, I want to ask you another question. Have you been on the speaking circuits?
I haven't been on the I mean, I've been more on the speaking circuit. So like my first language is Spanish. My family's from the Dominican Republic, so I've been in a lot of the speaking circuit. I would say in Latin America and Spain. I've been on the speaking circuit here too. What I would say about that pretty quickly is I was never really a big fan of like personal branding. Like I just didn't do it. It wasn't my thing. Like I'm super low key and chill. But the times really kind of pushed me to do it. They were like, hey, you should be more out there. You should brand yourself, etc. And I think what I had to make the separation of was I used to think personal branding was like arrogant. That was like my perception, right? My perception was like, oh, if I brand myself, if I put things on LinkedIn or on Twitter, then I'm arrogant and all that other stuff, right? But I had to make a separation, right? Because you could brand yourself in a way similar to Chima, like what she's doing and the important work that she's doing in terms of diversifying the industry in a way that's really kind of beneficial, you know, in a way that's really kind of valuable, right? And that doesn't mean that all of us don't have egos or anything of the sorts, because we all do. Everyone on this call has an ego, right? But it's really kind of realizing that, yeah, you could put your work forward, you could promote yourself, and it could feel in a way that's totally positive for you and totally feels comfortable for you. And I think that's one of the things that was definitely beneficial for me, just really kind of taking that step forward. And it really just kind of opened up a lot of opportunities and a lot of doors. You know, when I'm on the speaking circuit, I'm definitely the only person that looks like me, which is obviously a major problem in this industry. But, you know, I think, you know, I've definitely tried to change that. I think people like Chima's obviously trying to change that with a lot of the work that she's doing. But that's just the reality, you know, unfortunately, I would say.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Which brings me to my next question, because I think I think I keep saying this, that we need to diversify the speaking circuits. There are too many old white people. You see, we've basically been seeing the same people for the past 10 years. Someone was saying that they've seen the same people as the last 15 Brighton SEO, which is just ridiculous. So this crop of people who are coming in now, obviously they can even, I was telling them that they can even start speaking from next year. You don't need to have like 5 years of
No, yeah,
experience
I
to
agree.
speak,
I
like,
agree.
yeah. So
Yeah.
what advice would you give them if they want to start pitching to speak at virtual conferences, the time
Yeah.
where they don't need to travel? What kind of advice would you give them on how to pitch to speak at those kind of events and like start building their brand?
Yeah, I think number one, what's important, right? I think number one is obviously building some sort of presence on your own, right? Like building your own personal presence and really kind of like showcasing that value of the work you're doing online. That doesn't mean you give away all your secrets or trades or whatever, right? But there's ways to kind of show like the value of what you're doing online to the point where you can kind of grow your own following, you could kind of grow your own audience. But it also comes together with just kind of putting together a good pitch. Like, you know, looking at a Brighton SEO last year, looking at any of these other conferences, Search Love or whatever it may be, and saying, you know what, like one thing that was missing from this conference was this angle, right? And how can I potentially fill this angle by creating like, you know, a pitch that talks about the work I've done, but also what I want to talk about in this specific in this specific event, right? So I really feel like, similar to what you just said, I don't think you have to have tons of experience to kind of be on the speaker circuit. And I also think at the same time, while I would also say at the same time, like I could speak for America. I can't really speak for like anywhere else, right? Like whenever I talk to people of color here in the States, I tell them, look, there is no better time to take advantage of being a person of color than now, right? Like white people are bending over backwards in more cases than not to try to get more diverse faces and people on panels and all these other things, right? And once you get in the door, you get in the door, right? And you can just kind of build on your own, right?
Yeah.
And again, that may not necessarily apply everywhere, whether it's the UK or Europe or anywhere else, right? But I really do believe there's no better opportunity than now, considering the landscape over the last few years when it comes to these kind of topics. So I would definitely just kind of put together a really good pitch, but really just kind of put yourself out there in a way that feels comfortable for you to really kind of grow your own visibility.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I think it's very important when you pitch to pitch something that nobody else has talked about before, or to piggyback off what someone has said, but as a way of going deeper or offering like a more comprehensive insight into it. So I want you to guys to like just take note of that. Next year, I want you to start pitching at virtual conferences, the ones where you don't have to travel for, that you can do from home. And when you pitch, look at what past speakers have talked about.
Yep.
And then look for stuff that will be, because every conference has their audience. Some of them have audience, like stuff like Brighton SEO has audience for beginner level, mid-level, and then high level. You can pitch where you are. You just need to find gaps that currently exist that nobody has talked about, and then you can take that perspective, kind of like what I do with topic clusters. Like nobody else is talking about it, so every time I pitch anything around clusters, I'm usually the only one who is pitching it, which just gives me like an immediate in. So you need to always be finding that gap, that unique perspective. And trust me, like Claudio said, there's never been a better time to be black or colored than right now. I shit you not. This is the best time, because nobody's putting out an event or a panel where they have only white people anymore. Twitter is going to read you for filth if you try that shit. So this is it. This is the time now. I want to take this question from Prachi. I think it's a very good question. So Prachi said, how do you control bounce rate for new sites, since people rarely go deeper if their question is answered? Or would you not regard it as an important metric?
So one of the best parts of working at the Times was the direct relationship we had with Google as a big publisher, right? And bounce rate is something that Google takes really seriously, at least when it comes to editorial organizations. There's two ways to kind of answer that question, right? I think number one, it starts with like UX and site experience, right? If you have a site experience that's not necessarily the best, or a site experience that's not necessarily guiding you to additional pieces of content in a way that feels like, it looks good and it's a good user journey, then I think that's going to be a problem. I think at core, it's all about content, right? Sites that have better ways of kind of navigating a user journey, or just have content that's more valuable, tend to have much lower bounce rates than websites that are just kind of like, I would say, chasing clicks, or just kind of like writing articles that are aggregation. So I feel like if you don't necessarily have like an original content arm, like it really kind of makes it hard on some level, for sure. So I do think it's an important metric, because the more people that just come to your website and exit, it's kind of like a bad look from like a just retention perspective, and just kind of like Google kind of notices that stuff. So I really think just kind of steeping yourself in design, steeping yourself in the content, but also like, if you have a lot of visitors that are coming in through search, for example, like what is the experience that you're providing for them on search, right? So like if they come in for this specific article, never been on your website before, what can you do on that specific page that can make them want to consume more of your content, versus kind of just like Xing out once that answer is reached.
Okay, that's really good. Prachi, did that answer your question?
Yes, Chima. Thank you so much, Claudio.
Yeah, no worries at all. No worries at all.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, feel free to like, Twitter, DM me if you have any questions.
Yes. I'm going to push this question to you.
Chima has my email as well.
I'm going to push this question to
Chima,
you.
you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you. Claudia, I'm going to push these questions to you after the call. And then you can like answer them via email, and I will just push it to the group when you've answered them, so they have everything like in one comprehensive place. Does that work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just feel free to send it over to me, and I'll get you an answer within a few days.
Awesome. All right, Claudio, thank you so much for joining us. And before you leave, just give us your best smile, and then we'll take a picture and we'll put this on our social media. Okay. Sadiq, I was about to tell you to turn on the camera. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Catherine, why do you always look like someone is about to beat you with a stick in every picture? Like every single picture we have taken in this Tech SEO story, you always look like Someone is about to hit you or
I'm
something.
not a picture fan. I don't like pictures.
All right, Claudio, thank you so much for joining us. The rest of you, please stay behind. I want to talk to you guys. Claudio, you can depart now. Thank you
Thank you
very
so much.
much.
Appreciate you guys, and reach out to me
Yes.
whenever. Okay. Bye.
Awesome. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. What did I want to say? Yes. Okay. I just wanted to talk to you guys briefly because we haven't really had like time to chat properly. So, how are you doing? I want to get some feedback from you. How are you doing? What do you need? What's going on? Talk to me.
We are good. Thank you very
No,
much,
say I am
Chima,
good.
for
Speak
your
for
support.
yourself. Speak for yourself.
Abio.
Speak for yourself,
Okay,
please.
okay, I'm good.
No,
Uh-huh.
she has a an 11th member of this
I know.
cohort, so
I
she's
know.
probably talking about her.
I know.
And
I know. Bray has kids, so she's always got stuff going on. So she's speaking for many people in her house where she's talking. So that's understandable. Prachi, what's up?
Hi, Chima.
Hi.
This session particularly was really interesting for me with getting like insights on the news and publishing side of things. I was
Yes.
wondering if we could also get some insights on like somebody who has some experience with artificial intelligence and applies it
Ooh.
to SEO
Do you
or
know
like
what? You know what? If you have someone in mind that you want us to
yeah,
bring, tell me the person's name and I'll make it happen. It's really that simple.
okay.
Just give me a name.
Yes, I'll share the LinkedIn profiles with you on
Put
LinkedIn
it on the chat
and
here. Put it on the chat here. Put
okay.
it on the chat
Now,
here.
just
The
give me a
same
minute.
the same goes for everybody. If there's someone you want us to feature, maybe someone who has like a different perspective. So like I was very intentional about bringing Claudio because he's doing editorial SEO. And that's like a field that doesn't really get talked about, but it's also part of SEO. It's a career, like it's a full career routes. Like you start in editorial SEO and you probably not leaving because you can keep growing. You can keep growing. And you can see what Claudio is doing right now. He's working in audience. That's like audience engagement. That's like stuff that many people don't even know what Claudio does until he explains it to them, even inside SEO. So it's like I don't want you guys to pigeonhole yourself. I want to give you like a 360-degree perspective of all the career options that are available to you within tech SEO. It's not just agency or in-house. Like there are so many routes that you can explore. So keep an open mind. I like the idea of bringing someone who does artificial intelligence because again, that's really interesting stuff. I'm a big fan of AI. So Prachi, shoot me some names. I'm down with that. Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? You guys are all good, right?
Okay.
Awesome. Okay,
Uh,
Kingsley, Alison, sorry, what's up?
okay.
Oh,
Let
Lazarina.
me.
Lazarina is my friend. Oh, this should be easy. This should be easy. She's my friend. So I'm going to hit her up after this call. That's easy. That's easy. She's doing interesting
Okay.
stuff with machine learning. So we can definitely arrange that. Oh my God, I didn't stop recording.